The bushfire season is heating up for the rural fire service, with volunteers battling more than half a dozen blazes in the Cessnock district in the past week. Dry conditions have forced the service to bring forward Maitland, Cessnock, Muswellbrook and Singleton's fire permit period by 1 month.
At the moment we're finding our temperatures in the mid to low 20s with a humidity in and around probably 20%.
All landholders wishing to burn off need to notify their neighbours, and from next Monday they'll also have to obtain a permit from their local fire station or fire control centre. As for those living in town,
now people should be mindful of growth around the house, moving the wood pile away from the house, ember-proofing their roofs.
Those caught burning without a permit can cop a $5,000 fine or up to 10 years in jail. Lucy Wilson, NBN News.
It's taken a long time for little Eliza to be able to tackle this intersection again, but with a few friends along for moral support, she became the first to use the new signalled crossing. After the Junction public student was hit by a car here last year, her family and the community decided something needed to be done.
It was like a drag race every afternoon at 5 o'clock, 4 cars abreast over here, 3 over here. It was just going to happen.
People even here the night that Eliza was hit, they made phone calls and representations as well, the local business chamber. There was a lot of people involved in it.
And this is the result. 4 new traffic lights and controlled crossings, a narrower entrance to Watkins Street and a designated turning lane.
We've spent $800,000 improving the intersection and that is good for people who use this area, the restaurants and cafes, but also for the 2 local schools as well.
And it's impressed its toughest critic.
It's really safe for the cars when they turn and stuff.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
It can seem like a hard slog. But just look at the results, whether it be measured by the butter chart or the tape. Leapfrog's active living program is a resounding success. It's been built up over 5 years and now 50 clients use this purpose-built gym.
Getting people together and making them feel like it's a fun thing to do as well as exercise. There's sort of that stigma attached, you've got to sweat and it's got to be painful. Well, it doesn't have to be.
I do weights and I'm losing weight.
I love to do exercise and I love boxing and losing weight.
The gym is a first, a model the state government hopes to expand on.
It's a great example that other service providers should look at, and indeed we're here today to highlight it because it's such tremendous success.
Politicians are used to copping a few blows in public life, but it seems the minister got out of this lightly.
Is she a good sport about it?
Yeah, but I couldn't hit her too hard.
Since the turn of the millennium, the Science and Engineering Super Challenge has been about more than teaching high school students that science is fun. It's addressing Australia's critical shortage of engineers.
Basically, almost every developed country in the world produces more engineers per million of population than we do.
The brightest science students from 34 schools across the state use their creativity to solve 20 problems based on scientific principles. And it seems there's some stiff competition coming from the Hunter.
St Mary's from Gateshead are absolutely tremendous.
Research shows they're heading in the right direction. 1/3 of the students here will go on to study science or engineering after school.
When they come back at the end of the day with eyes as big as saucers and say, Mr Nelson, that's the best thing I've ever done, that's pretty special.
Lucy Wilson, NBN News.
Like several nights greats before him, Danny Medeiros walked the very same line to deliver news few wanted to hear. Flanked by his wife Chris and many of his teammates, Medeiros fulfilled his last job as Newcastle captain as reality of life set in.
It took a good 48 hours to slowly sink in, and that's my last time I'll be just wearing the colours.
It was meant to be a week of farewells, followed by his last home game against the Storm. Instead, the plaudits came early, and deservedly so.
I don't think he'll ever be replaced. We might find some more champions, but we won't find another one quite like this fella.
For a man who's always preferred actions over words, his legacy is sure to live on.
I'm not the quickest, I'm not the strongest, but I like to think I'm right up there in competitiveness, and if I've left a little bit in the boys, I'm pretty happy to say I've done that.
Debuting in 1997, Medeiros went on to play 220 times for Newcastle and won a premiership. He played 21 Origins and 24 times for his country. He's determined to join Leeds in England after a 6-month recovery from both arm and knee surgery, but there's little doubt it's team that Medeiros will miss most about Newcastle, and at least he got to share the last bit of that at the weekend.
And the boys pulled me back around and got around me and sang the team song, and that's definitely something I'll never forget.
Applauded as he left today. The raw home fans will give him before Saturday night's match may just lift the roof. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
If everyone just this week just has that extra hit up or that extra grunt in the tackle for Bedsy, I think it'll go a long way to the victory.
Obviously him and Joey, have helped my career a hell of a lot, and like I said before, it's very sad to see him go like it was Joey, and it's a true legend, lost to the NRL.
I'll be making hopefully an announcement this week what I'm doing next year. Got a few things on the table, and I'm hoping to make an announcement sometime this week.
Triathlon Australia want it known. They think Newcastle is a great venue for big events, but at the same time they're not scheduling any of them here in the immediate future. In fact, they've just taken away a round of the Australian Series. It'll be replaced by the New South Wales titles under a restructure of their national competitions, which leaves the popular venue out of the major event loop for now.
Oh, toughest course I've done. I was starting to cramp on the last lap, and I thought that's enough. It was really tough, but very picturesque, beautiful place to have a race.
New Zealand and now Australian champion Catherine Anton agrees with the international competitor, convinced non-capital city venues are actually the way to go.
I am a big fan of courses in the smaller towns. I think you get better support from the townspeople.
Golf, and Sydney's Ken Drews has narrowly won the $105,000 East Coast Swing Series after the final event at Morisset at the weekend. It literally came down to the closing holes, with Drews finishing in a tie for second with Richie Gallatin. Enough for him to claim overall victory from the Gosford golfer by just a shot after the 7-event series. Ed Steadman from the Vintage actually won the Morisset Pro-Am by a comfortable 4 strokes after finishing 7 under. Back on home soil and with precious cargo to boot, the Beijing Games was everything Angie Bainbridge thought it would be, and so much more. The gold medal she won as a heat swimmer of the successful 4x200 metre freestyle relay is the only one of its colour heading to the Hunter.
I think I want to take it home to Newcastle and leave it in my room back home so it's safe and stuff. So.
Look, it's the first gold medal heading to Newcastle on the Hunter for a while. It must be a proud achievement.
Yeah, it's a very good achievement. I'm pretty proud of myself.
Starting these games as a baby of the Australian swim team, come London 2012, Angie wants to be a dominant force. But for now, it's all about rest and relaxation.
For our basketballers, it's that elusive gold which is spurring them on another 4 years.
You know, the hunger's there and the desire, and 4 years now, we'll wait and we'll try again and hopefully we'll come up trumps that time.
After the Opals claimed a third straight Olympic silver, Susie Bankovic shelved representative retirement plans, but she's got other things on her mind for now.
I've got 5 weeks to plan my wedding and then I go overseas to Italy for 8 months and then I come home and get married. So these next 5 weeks are going to be pretty mayhem, especially because I don't like dresses, so it's going to be interesting.
For softballer Natalie Ward, it's a different story. After 4 Olympics and as many medals, today was her last as a current Olympian.
Amazing journey. It's sad for it to be over, and obviously happy to get the bronze, but would dearly have loved to have made the fairy tale ending with the gold.
For so long juggling the demands of softball, much to her physical and financial detriment, she wouldn't swap it for quids.
I mean, it's not even the medals, it's the Olympic journey. It's what we get to experience right from the opening ceremonies to the closing. It's such a fabulous opportunity we've had and so lucky to be a part of.
And that's truly what the Olympics are all about. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
It seems people power is making Hunter politicians sit up and take notice. With countless protests and letters of concern regarding electricity privatisation, the majority of Hunter MPs are listening to the objections of their constituents.
We've got 2 power stations in the electorate, Vales Point and Lake Munmora, and of course they've been very strong in their opposition. But can I say that so have a lot of the community. I am battling in any case to find anyone who's prepared to come out and support it.
Swansea MP Robert Coombs initially opposed the plan. He's since been weighing up the debate and today announced he's sticking to his guns. He'll join Kerry Hickey, Matthew Morris and Sonia Hornery in opposing their own government's plan, while Jodie McKay and Frank Terenzini will support the bill.
At the end of the day, I have great concerns about future supply and future pricing.
Independent member for Lake Macquarie Greg Piper today told NBN News he's fundamentally opposed to the privatisation, while National Party MP George Souris will also vote against it. Barry O'Farrell has so far refused to state how the Liberals will vote. Port Stephens MP Craig Bowman today said they will meet tomorrow afternoon to make a decision. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Staff at the blood bank say they haven't seen it this quiet in years. It's a rare situation, but there is now barely enough blood in storage to meet the demand of the next week.
Well, currently we've got less than 5 days supply, so we're looking to get people in to start boosting those numbers up again. With the winter and cold and flu season, cool weather, it's actually stopping, we think, perhaps some donors coming in, and it's dropping off what we would normally collect at this time of year.
Registered donors like Jeff Savage are being called in to try and boost supplies. 21,000 donations are needed Australia-wide every week to ensure that people with cancer, heart disease, kidney and bowel disease, as well as accident victims, have enough to survive. At the moment, blood banks in Newcastle and Maitland are short by around 140 donations a week. I'm one of many people who never gave blood because I was too busy or thought it'd make me feel queasy. But if the Hunter blood banks are going to get the 3,500 donations they need every month, then more people are going to have to step up. Think of it as a call to arms.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
To raise the funds, our staff have payroll deductions as little as $1 a week, up until however much they want to contribute to it.
Melbourne isn't one of Newcastle's traditional rivals, but Danny Badiris has had plenty of influence over the Storm's coach and captain.
There's a lot of good hookers going around, but I don't know, it was just something different when I played against Danny. He's such a great competitor, and I think he always brought the best out in myself.
Craig Bellamy says he had the privilege of coaching Badiris in both the country and New South Wales sides.
I've never ever met or worked with a more competitive guy than Danny. He's such a gentleman off the field, but when he crosses that white line, he just does anything he can do to help his side win.
Cameron Smith was once the heir apparent to Badiris' throne as the game's best number 9, and their battles at origin level became legendary. Smith admits he modelled parts of his game on the former Blues captain.
Yeah, he certainly helped me with my footy, so I guess I've got to owe him a little bit of what I've done in my career to him.
Playing Newcastle without Badiris would usually be a bonus, but the pair admit injury was a cruel way to deny the Knights legend a fitting farewell.
It's a shame he's not playing on Saturday night, for him and Newcastle, but I'm sure they'll give him the send-off he deserves. I'm sure there'll be a big crowd there.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
I'm very pleased indeed. Yeah, it's been hard, but it's been really very pleasing with the players I've had. A good bunch of young boys, they work hard, and we got some results out of it.
Overcoming injury and vertigo. It was a minor miracle that Matt Helms even made the games, let alone narrowly missed out on winning a medal. With his long-time synchro partner Robert Newbery set to retire, it's the gold medal winning performance of young gun Matthew Mitcham, which is flaming Helms' desire for one more go.
Maybe I might be able to pair up with Matty Mitcham, who's done so well at these Olympics. So, who knows what could happen? We'll just have to wait and see whether, there might be a chance that Matty and I might do a bit of 10-metre synchro and kick some butt.
Motivation of a different kind for Lake Macquarie sailors Ben Austin and Nathan Outeridge, who are still getting over the disappointment of capsizing within sight of gold.
It's going to take a while to get over something like that, especially after you're looking so good and you're so confident halfway through the event, and just to miss out, you know, it's something that's going to be in your mind for a few years to come for sure.
We haven't actually talked about plans for the future yet, but yeah, there is a bit of unfinished business.
The disappointment of that heartbreaking finish for our sailors will obviously fuel them on to London in 2012. But there's no hiding the desire in plenty of our other Hunter Olympians as well.
Soon to turn 21, water polo player Richie Campbell believes the last few weeks have put years on him.
This was a fantastic experience for me, like it really built me as a player and built my confidence. You know, I'll be there for the next one.
So too Ben Harradine after the big discus thrower was floored by food poisoning in the build-up to Beijing.
I'm looking forward to London. It's where I'm going to be at my peak, so I'll be everything's guns blazing towards that time.
Not so bronze medalist Belinda Wright. Softball is no longer on the Olympic schedule, but the high school teacher has one great story to tell when she returns to work.
I've had a few emails saying we can't wait for show and tell, so I think it'll be an exciting day when I get to go back and say, hey, look everyone.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
A blackened shell is all that's left of the two-storey home at Nelson Bay. It's still not clear what sparked the fire that engulfed the house in Austral Street about 1:30 this morning. Inside was Julie Gibson, her partner Neil, their two teenagers, a granddaughter and two other littlies aged 7 and 5. Despite breathing in smoke and suffering burns to their hands, Julie and Neil managed to help everyone out except 2-year-old Taya.
They could not evacuate a 2-year-old grandchild from the house, and she unfortunately perished in the fire.
Their granddaughter, who I know Julie absolutely doted on, is lost. It's very sad.
Neighbours say Taya was staying with her grandmother because her parents were at a Sydney hospital with another of their children who had recently undergone a transplant operation. At the same time, grandfather Neil is battling cancer. For the family, today was supposed to bring the distraction of a few moments of joy. It's little Taya's father's birthday.
It's going to be horrible in years to come that this has actually happened, and how that poor man is going to be able to get through this day.
They've had such a hard time, and it's a great family, and they've pulled through so much.
The takeaway shop here at Little Beach, where Julie works, was closed today as a mark of respect. As the family comes to terms with the loss of little Taya, the coroner has begun an investigation. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Their plea has come very much at the 11th hour.
85 to 95% of the people of New South Wales, who are the rightful owners of this very valuable asset, are saying they don't want to sell or privatise. So to me, this cuts at the heart of democracy.
Workers at Bayswater and Liddell power stations today begged MPs not to bow to party pressure.
Think about it, because it's not in the people's favour. If it was, you'd have a referendum and let them have a vote, because people really don't want it.
They're asking fellow workers to continue to rally Hunter Valley MPs right up to the very last minute.
This is our last chance, you know, we really need people to contact their MPs.
But workers fear parliamentarians have already made up their minds.
All the MPs just seem to be listening to Morris Emma and Michael Costa and believe in their tactics, and for the life of me, I can't see why.
And despite the Premier's repeated assurances his door would always be open to discuss the issue, workers have been refused a meeting.
Morris Emma has not met with us, and we were very disheartened by that.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. Late-night assault and alcohol-related crime rates have plunged throughout Newcastle's CBD, according to police, who now want to see similar results in Hamilton. They're asking Hamilton licensees to adopt identical trading restrictions, and while some venues have already agreed, others need a bit more persuasion.
It's our hope that they will voluntarily come on board.
If they don't voluntarily come on board, we have other options that we're going to look at in relation to that.
That could mean once again taking legal action against hotels in the licensing court. Meanwhile, police will keep a close eye on late-night crime rates following the change to a 1:30 curfew and 3:30 closure times now in place throughout Newcastle's CBD.
There's a trend in a negative direction. We'll certainly be looking at our options in relation to making tighter restrictions.
Officers will also monitor the number of people treated in Newcastle hospitals for injuries sustained during alcohol-related assaults and violence.
It's just another independent statistics that we can rely on, as opposed to the reports that we take.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It isn't just car drivers who can find themselves being pulled over by the law. New South Wales Maritime says its 57 boating officers will be stopping more than 40,000 recreational boaties in the next year.
Boating officers will pull over to a boat for a chat. They'll have an inspection of the safety equipment to ensure that they've got the right equipment on board, that the boat's not overloaded, and that they're going to enjoy the recreational boating in safety.
During the week-long camp, the officers are being given a refresher on the latest boating laws, the issuing of fines and how to follow through to a prosecution in more serious cases.
It's a real-life scenarios, and they're coached along the way, and they're assessed, and it ensures that we have a consistent and fair approach to how we enforce our legislation.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Fast and friendly is the theme of this year's National Meals on Wheels Day, and they don't come much quicker than cartoon character Speedy Gonzales, who's been recruited to deliver meals in Merryweather. The Super Mouse joined more than 100,000 volunteers Australia-wide by providing delicious and nutritious meals for 60,000 people. Among them, 92-year-old Frances King, who used to be a meals volunteer.
Gratitude of the recipients was always a reward, and there were times when we called on people who had done so much for the community all their lives that it was a privilege to be in their presence, and often quite humbling.
Frances now looks forward to someone paying her a visit 3 times a week, providing meals and a listening ear.
And they greet you with a lovely smile, and they're always bright and happy.
And to mark the special occasion, emergency service workers at Charlestown lent a hand with deliveries. The volunteers not only help the frail and people with disabilities remain happy and healthy, but they're assisting them to live independently in their homes. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It wasn't quite This Is Your Life, but trips down memory lane came thick and fast for Danny Badiris, stitched up by former teammates and good friends Mark Hughes and Andrew Johns. A farewell all about fun, as was the case when they played together, lived together.
He's a good cook. He's quite clean these days. He didn't have them traits when he was living with me, but no, there's not much, as I said, no dirt on him at all. We just laughed our way through our footy careers. It was fantastic.
If a packed auditorium wasn't testament to his popularity, this certainly was, showing the esteem he's held in on both sides of the border.
And everyone likes him, and to be honest, so they should. He was a wonderful character and promoted the game of rugby league very well.
Tough, courageous, competitive, loyal.
And humble.
From a bloke, you know, when he first come, had such a wonderful natural shyness about him, he's become a colossus, and I think his career path is a good example for everyone else to follow.
Recollections too of his junior days, like when Mum became involved a bit too much. Badiris will have surgery tomorrow, then another farewell at the Knights game this weekend, but after today it will be hard to top.
I think only a town like Newcastle could do this and support one of their players. So see some childhood heroes here like Wally Lewis and players like that. That's huge. It's massive.
Brent McCullough has already won the Queensland and Victorian trainee tournaments, and the Sydney sider is set for another in this, his home state championship.
Brent's an amazing player with a lot of potential. He plays off a +4 handicap at Pymble Golf Club, and he'll definitely be the one to catch.
His rivals will be hard-pressed doing so. McCullough has an 11-shot lead thanks to a string of birdies and a third-round 64. Coupled with a challenging Hawk's Nest course, which has the event until 2010, those chasing will need something special during tomorrow's final round.
Given that we don't have much water, but with the number of trees on the course, you've only got to get into the trees once and it makes it a much tougher game.
Curry's Matthew Jones knew what that was all about on the 8th, but recovered to remain the best-placed Hunter trainee. Even par at the start of the day, he finished it at 4 under, moving into outright second and overtaking Tamworth's John Brown. He started things at 2 under, but after struggling with his short game at times, finished with a 78, tying for 10th. Order of Merit leader Nathan King from Manly remains in the hunt though, and despite slipping back from 3rd to equal 4th, the experience is all part of their training on the way to becoming professional.
This gives them playing experience that really they don't get week in, week out. It gives them a week of tournament golf where they're playing a golf course in testing conditions and set up as tough as they can make it.
Light rain fell today on the scene of yesterday's tragic house fire, which has shocked an entire community. It emerged today that hero grandmother Julie Gibson managed to help her 2 teenagers and all 3 grandchildren out of the burning house. She braved the flames again to look for her terminally ill husband Tubby, unaware that little Taya had followed her back into the house where she perished. Mrs Gibson has been visited in the John Hunter Hospital by her sister Christine.
Just emotionally, she's just shattered.
She says the events have hit the family hard.
Julie has done everything for everybody all her life. And Tubby, they're ones that just go out for everybody and everybody knows that. And same with Jason, Lana. And it's just unbelievable that this could be happening to them. It's just a nightmare.
Family friend and Port Stephens Mayor Ron Swan has launched a fundraising appeal through the local council.
I'll be putting $5,000 in from the mayoral fund, and through the NAB at bank we'll be setting up, hopefully with some of our service clubs, some fundraising for a period of time.
Patterson MP Bob Baldwin, who also knows the family, offered his support from federal parliament today.
To Tubby, Julie and the family, I offer my sincere condolences, and be rest assured that our community prayers are with you.
Little Taya's parents remain at Westmead Children's Hospital with their 10-month-old baby who is in intensive care after a liver transplant. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It's been described by barrister Robert Peaty as a momentary lapse in concentration, which resulted in a van colliding with a car at a set of traffic lights in Gateshead last year. The passenger of the station wagon, 18-year-old Amy Leroyd, was seriously injured and later died in hospital. Newcastle District Court has been told cladding installer Scott Foster was heading downhill at about 60 kilometres an hour when the traffic lights turned from green to amber as he approached. It's alleged he was afraid to stop quickly as he had a passenger in the back along with power tools. His barrister asked, when they changed to amber, you were conscious of the tools in the back of the van? Yes. What happened next? Did a car turn across in front of you? Yes. He made a right-hand turn. You couldn't avoid hitting Mr. Leroyd's car? Yes. The Crown prosecutor disputed the accused's recollection, saying it may not be accurate. The father of two told Newcastle District Court that he was very sorry the crash occurred. He said, "Not a day goes by that I don't wish it didn't happen." Scott Foster will be sentenced on September 17. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
For a long time, people have believed this kind of exercise at an early age can stunt growth, but Dr. David Lubin says that's just not the case.
Lots of medical associations all recommend resistance training for children and adolescents, as long as it's supervised and within restricted kind of sets and repetitions.
Now the University of Newcastle has paired up with St Pius High School to compare the effects of training with free weights against using an elastic tubing device for resistance.
So I come 2 lunchtimes a week and I've got a range of exercises I have to do, so like arm ones, leg ones.
If the two are found to have similar results, it will be good news for schools, as the resistance tubes are much cheaper and far less bulky than traditional weights equipment. We hear plenty about the startling number of children who are obese, and sadly those weight problems often carry through to adulthood. That's why it's so important that we get children interested in exercise, no matter what the kind, at an early age. And the early signs are positive.
I think because they're with their friends, they don't see it as a bit daunting, as some may do when they're going to a public gym.
Yeah, I do enjoy PE, but right now doing dancing, I don't really like that.
Okay, so maybe resistance training would suit you a bit better.
Yeah.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Using treated effluent to keep the fairways green is nothing new for golf courses. Some hunter courses have been doing it for half a century. But at East's Leisure and Golf Club at East Maitland, the recycled effluent, which is pumped from the nearby Morpeth treatment works, is now being stored on site in a purpose-built dam.
And then from there we can have total control over the water, where we then can extract the water from the dam and then place it out onto the golf course on demand.
The new dam and irrigation system cost almost $500,000 to install, but will save about 10 million litres of water each year because the water can be targeted to where it's needed via a network of sprinklers.
This golf course here is 100% totally reliant on treated recycled effluent water. There's no potable water used on this golf course to irrigate any turf surfaces here at all.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
A cold concrete car park at Charlestown became a home away from home last night as the temperatures dropped to a chilly 9 degrees.
Cardboard, paper, cement, and sleep bag.
This was one of many authentic setups demonstrating how thousands of homeless people attempt to keep warm every night. The 32 Centrelink managers from the Hunter, Central Coast, North West and Mid-North Coast regions roughed it for a good reason. Their aim to foster empathy between social workers and clients while raising more than $12,000 for Samaritans and Wesley City Mission.
Trying to give managers in Centrelink locally a little bit of an insight into some of the issues that homeless people actually have to face every night.
Once the bedding was set up, it was time for a soup kitchen style dinner, complete with snags and sauce.
I think the idea was for people to try and get a bit of a sense about what it's really like to be homeless, and we know it's only a little bit of a taste because we are obviously in a car park of our building, etc. But people are trying to sort of do it a little bit tough.
Then it was time for lights out.
It's very hard, it's uncomfortable, so it's going to be a very long night.
as the staff members drifted off to sleep, or attempted to anyway. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
A calf injury has robbed Jasper Hawkinson of 2 A-League games so far, but not a third.
But now I'm back and really run 100%, so that feels really good.
And according to his coach, he will start the Melbourne match, providing extra firepower as the Jets chase their first win.
He'll play a more forward-going position. We've done some work on that this morning on the training paddock, and it seemed to work quite well.
And finding combinations has suddenly become that much harder. Ante Kovic and Jade North will play tomorrow night before leaving for Socceroos camp in Europe on Saturday.
It does leave a bit of a hole in regards to the age of the team and the way that sometimes the training can be conducted, but that gives opportunity for some others to put their hand up.
Others like young Ben Kantarovski, who remains in the mix to play the victory, having been named in the Jets' 16-man squad.
He's sure he can step up, no problem if I was to be away. So, there's depth in the team, just a matter of shifting people around.
For Kovic, Ben Kennedy comes into the frame, and while boasting the only 2 A-League players in the national squad, North admits all the travel has been taxing, especially given the recent Olyroos campaign. The pair should be back for the match against Sydney FC on the 13th of September. You get the feeling the Knights would love a carbon copy of Andrew Johns this Saturday, with the team to meet Melbourne far from settled.
Have got a couple of problems at the moment. Had a couple of guys sick today and unable to train. We'll see how they go tomorrow.
Steve Simpson and Corey Patterson, however, did train, but both will have to prove their fitness tomorrow, and Newcastle will need all the muscle it can muster.
Melbourne are a very physical team. They base their game on physical dominance, and it ain't going to be a place for shrinking violets on Saturday afternoon, that's for sure.
With the now permanent absence of Danny Badiris, those set to fill the void know they have a job ahead of them. Matt Hilda steps into the hooking role, one he wants to make his own.
I'm not really trying to fill Bedsy's shoes at all, just trying to do what I do best and go out there and rip into him.
And that's good enough for his coach.
He loves to tackle, and he's got a terrific motor. He can play 80 minutes, so he's on the raw meat diet this week, and hopefully he can get the job done for us.
Saturday is Old Boys Day, and their new captain isn't backing away from the challenge.
Our fans deserve a last win, and it's certainly a special day for me with all the ex-players.
The rewiring of the state's power sale has left Hunter Valley unions reeling.
The Premier has no right, in the face of 80 to 85% of the population of New South Wales saying no, to privatise any part whatsoever of electricity in New South Wales. So we'll continue the campaign up to and including industrial action.
Hunter business leaders say the Premier's decision to sell electricity retailers and future development sites like this Macquarie Generation-owned site in Tomago will cost the region.
The Chamber had always argued that a proportional amount of the proceeds from any sale would be spent here in the Hunter. I guess the consequence of that now is that if that majority of that sale is not going forward, that those monies won't be coming here.
But not everyone's against the move. In a statement, the member for Newcastle said, "It's Plan B and it won't get us out of the predicament we're in because we've got to pay to retrofit generators. That money will come out of schools, health, community services and improvements to infrastructure in the Hunter." Lake Macquarie Independent Greg Piper believes the fight is far from over.
They haven't given up to date, even when they've said that they're going to walk away from it. So I don't think we've got any reason to believe that they won't come back and try and sell the generators as well.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Around 50 Beechwood customers gathered today for the chance to speak directly to the company's new owner, Vic Cavassini, and Paul Jameson from insurance company Vero. And with the building of homes now at least 4 months behind schedule, they didn't hold back.
And all I've got is just lies and just strung up the bloody garden path.
More than anything, it's just been frustrating for us, and we still don't really have an expectation of when it will be completed.
Looking uncomfortable at times, Beechwood's new owner assured customers he was doing everything to get work underway.
Well, there are 92 homes that are needed in total, and there's 40 odd that have commenced. And obviously the balance will get going as soon as we possibly can.
For some, that could mean their homes aren't even started until next year. Mother of two, Belinda Brands, is chasing answers. These are pictures of her new home at Cameron Park just a couple of weeks ago. But this is Belinda's home today, what's left of it. It was almost finished when Beechwood Homes collapsed, and after 14 weeks of no activity on the site, vandals broke in last Tuesday and burnt it down.
We were absolutely gutted because we've waited so long, and we were sort of starting to get excited again because everything was going to start again.
Some families have been waiting over a year for their homes to be built, completely souring their enthusiasm for building.
No, I'd never ever think about doing it again. I'd always buy a house that's already built.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It may look like a section of the F3 freeway, but this stretch of dual carriageway at Shortland is only a couple of kilometres long. It's part of the Newcastle inner city bypass, but at the moment it's a road to nowhere. The section is supposed to connect to the final 2 stages of the bypass, but they haven't been built yet.
I think that's been planned to death. All we need now is someone to say, we'll press the button and we'll start construction.
The state government is under pressure to complete the final stages from Rankin Park to the Jesmond roundabout, plus Sandgate to Shortland, but so far it's only committed $2 million.
The first few legs were built decades ago, and then there are some missing links in the middle, and in particular the Rankin Park to Jesmond roundabout area where we are today is a real major missing link.
In 2006, a report put the cost of that section alone at $168 million.
If you're looking at key infrastructure projects, this is an absolute must for Newcastle, and it should be top of the priority list.
The Charlestown bypass was completed in 2003. However, since then, Rankin Park and New Lambton Heights have become choked with slow-moving traffic. Once finished, it's hoped the Newcastle bypass will resolve the congestion and bottlenecks. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
According to Australia's biggest blue-collar workers' union, a tax on carbon emissions would hit hard in the Hunter.
The Hunter's economy is carbon intensive. With the coal industry, the steel industry, the aluminium industry, it provides large employment for this region, but it's also carbon intensive and will be affected by the introduction of an ETS.
Tomago Aluminium is one operation where a reduction in profitability due to a carbon scheme could see job losses. The union is calling on the federal government to allow time for new, greener technologies to be introduced rather than forcing production overseas.
Every tonne of aluminium that's made in Australia has 50% less emissions than every tonne of aluminium that's made in China, for example. And if we were to close facilities like Tomago and move them to regions like China, we'd actually be making the greenhouse gas problem worse.
It was sightseeing by some American tourists, but on a whole new level. 2 F-18 Hornets and 3 F-15C Eagles flew in formation this afternoon while taking a tour of Sydney to capture some picture postcard moments.
These guys have come all the way from Oregon, the Air National Guard, to support us on our fighter combat instructor course, and they're obviously keen to get some photos of the iconic Sydney Harbour Bridge.
But there's also been plenty of real work going on back at Williamtown RAF Base. Pilots and trainers from both sides of the Pacific are taking part in exercises, on the ground in simulators and in the air.
We are here as a training aid for the F-18s, so we're providing them the different types of bandit presentations, you will, and that they need to see for their air-to-air combat training.
It's a rare opportunity for the Aussies to take on foreign aircraft in combat training pitted against the world's best. 6 F-15C Eagle aircraft are visiting the Williamtown base, along with dozens of US personnel.
This exercise is important to both of our countries. This produces Australia's top guns, our best and our brightest.
The exercises will continue for another few weeks. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
These are the earliest images of Danny Badiris as a Newcastle Knight, a fresh-faced teenager from Taree who could only dream of what lay ahead. Last Saturday saw the premature end of his playing days at Newcastle, but in between he built a career few could even hope to match. One of his biggest fans spoke this week about the shock and disappointment of losing one of the greats.
You know, I think I was like everyone. I felt sick, and I know it meant a lot to Danny to play the last game at home in front of, you know, his home crowd and in front of the old boys, which is always big for the club. But I think also the extra spice of playing against Cameron Smith at home, against Melbourne, the best team of the modern era. So to me, mate, the way you've played for so long and the injuries you've carried and the commitment you show every time you go out in the field, it's a miracle you've lasted this long and not broken down. You know, I've seen you firsthand, just the injuries he's played with, and just, you know, to play with a guy, it's inspirational to know how much he's hurting and the way he plays. So for him to come this far before he has a big major setback, it has been a miracle for him.
You've classed him as the best player you've played with. Yeah. How will the general rugby league population, do you think, hold Danny in years to come?
Well, they'll hold him as one of the elite hookers of all time, right up there in the top 2 or 3 players.
Much like Andrew Johns did last season, Badiris will walk his last lap as a Knight tomorrow.
You just got to do a job on him and try to contain him as much as possible. You're not going to stop him because he's such a quality player, but yeah, I could just do my job.
To come up against him, it's going to be a real test. He leads them, you know, out the front and by example, so he's going to be the hard man to contain.
Both teams have one hand on the cup, but it's who'll walk away with it on Sunday that counts. Cessnock captain Adrian McNabb has visions of holding it aloft on what would be a fitting finale for the Newcastle stalwart.
I certainly want to be able to walk off the field at the end of the game, hold my head high, and give it the best shot.
He's one of several go winners playing their last. Kane Bradley, Steve Storey and Lance Leonard all thought to be retiring on Sunday afternoon.
I don't think there'll be many people left in the township on Sunday afternoon. We can only hope that we get a victory, and I'm damn sure the club will be full when we get home.
Incredibly, West skipper Dan Quinn is suiting up for his first ever senior grand final.
30-year-old now, and this is the first one, so hopefully I've left me run just at the right time.
After dusting Cessnock 42-4 just 2 weeks ago, West will start warm favourites on Sunday, but Quinn knows that doesn't guarantee a thing.
They'll turn up ready to play, and you know, I'm expecting a really hard physical game, and I'm sure it will be.
Kick-off at Number 1 Sports Ground at 3 o'clock. Greg Smith doesn't get nervous before big games, and why should he? Guiding Hamilton to 4 straight premierships before having a break from coaching, he's returned to earn Coach of the Year honours and bring a young Azuri team along a path he knows all too well.
We've never done it easy. We've never been into a grand final. I've never been into a grand final finishing first, so we've done it from second, third or fourth, so hopefully we can do it this year.
It'll be without 2 of his best all season though. Captain Will Price and Matt Tull are both out to suspension, but that could be tempered somewhat on Sunday.
Been saying that, we've got Josh Maguire back, Hopefully, I don't know, maybe he has to go back to Dubai. If he gets a call, he goes. If not, he plays.
Magic mentor Peter McGuinness expects him to be there for a game that pits master against apprentice. He served under his mate Smith for years and is looking forward to this game more than most.
He's a very good friend, I'm proud to say that. But it's gloves off on the weekend, and I'm sure we'll share a couple of beers after it. So, no, I look forward to the challenge, and I know my players do.
After speeding through the streets of Newcastle, the dangerous chase came to an abrupt end in Hamilton. Most police pursuits last just a few minutes. Today's went for nearly half an hour.
Given the serious nature of who we thought may be on board, we allowed the pursuit to continue.
Teams of police began following the stolen car after it failed to stop in the Newcastle suburb of Katara at 10:30 this morning. Police say on 2 occasions they saw the men throw guns from the vehicle.
On the first incident, it was found that a shotgun had been thrown from the vehicle, and in another suburb, a black case was thrown from the vehicle, which contained a pistol and a silencer.
Witnesses couldn't believe what they saw.
They just kept going up wrong side of the road, through red lights. We just weren't sure what was happening.
A silver Astra flew past the shop, breakneck speed, followed by about 6 cop cars straight behind him.
It was amazing. We had, half a dozen police just roaring up the road really quickly.
They did an extremely good job in a tough situation that we could have been fired upon at any time. In retrospect, it was a very, very dangerous situation.
A 27-year-old Waratah man and his 24-year-old brother will face Newcastle local court on numerous driving and firearm charges tomorrow. Madeline Bond, NBN News. Watching him today, you'd never know Dominic Malaire was fighting for his life just 2 weeks ago. The 3-year-old poisoned himself after secretly snacking on the contents of a thermoskin ice pack, an act which quickly rendered him unconscious.
And when we went to wake him up, he couldn't stand, he couldn't hold his head up straight, he couldn't speak properly.
Not knowing what was wrong, his parents rushed him to hospital, where tests revealed high levels of acid in his blood consistent with antifreeze poisoning. While the toxic chemical isn't supposed to be in thermoskins, testing at Westmead Children's Hospital revealed it was. The manufacturer United Pacific Industries is yet to admit any wrongdoing.
I think they're worried about how it's going to affect their bottom line. They haven't expressed any concern whatsoever about the welfare of our son.
The Therapeutic Goods Administration has asked the company to voluntarily recall the product, but that hasn't happened. That's prompted the Malaires to issue this warning.
It's really important to me as a mum to make sure that other mums know that there's a potential risk there and just to keep these things away from their kids.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
there's Australian crews here ready and willing to man these ships to do their jobs. It's our case, we're entitled to those jobs, and whatever we've got to do, we will do.
After suggesting his players gave up last night, the coach maintained his rage today. Senior players were in the crosshairs, with Van Egmond claiming ongoing contract speculation has caught up with the likes of Jade North and Ante Kovic.
I can't put it down to anything else. I mean, it's not ability, because if it was, they wouldn't be going on a plane today to Holland to represent their country. You would expect that the leadership from those two players would be outstanding. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and that can't happen.
He went even further, saying the club must act now to resolve the playing futures of those two, along with Joel and Adam Griffiths, or have it remain an unwanted distraction.
The sooner the club sorts all four out and there's an outcome to their future, I think it's all the better for the players and for the club.
As for last night's performance, players couldn't hide from that 5-0 result.
It was crap. Like, we had a meeting after the game and whatnot, and everyone put their hand up and obviously said that everyone was, below par.
Stung by suggestions they gave up in the second half, even they knew there was little in the way of a defence.
No one really got backed up, you know what I mean? Like, it was last year, if someone wasn't playing well, you sort of picked them up and you sort of tried to cover them. In the end yesterday, I think everyone was just worried about themselves.
Everyone is on notice. We've got 2 weeks now, and the team and the players that obviously have the best attitude in towards the game coming up into Sydney, they'll play.